Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to build strength and power through adversity? I have, so stick around. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I am Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls, how this whole thing got started in the first place. Pretty dang awesome. If you haven't joined us on YouTube, go ahead and do that now. Go to YouTube, subscribe, hit the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time so you can catch all the latest from the Giants. And we also have a tribe of Giants on Facebook. There's about 4,000 some odd people and growing rapidly that are there to support. Good content gets put there. It's a great place to meet, connect, and to just grow as the
Yeah,
Giants. So,
all kinds of ways.
all kinds of ways.
Kinds of ways. Weird ways sometimes to be a giant, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Whatever
And
speaks to you.
anything else, Nick, that I'm missing?
Yeah, we've got the SG groups, the Sum Gigante groups coming up in January. We've got three of those, or four actually, one being taught by me and one by Melissa Ross and Nicole Castillo. And so be looking for those. We'll get the announcements out here shortly. And outside of that, no, we're just serving.
That way we dive through all 12 journeys of the steps of becoming a giant.
Yeah, stuff you already know
Giant
that you
journey.
don't know that you know.
Yeah.
So we just clarify it.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
reteach you.
Teach you. Clean up the mess.
Yeah.
Well, good. We got an amazing guest. Shall we dive in?
Oh, I'm so excited for today.
Yeah, best show we've ever done. We say that every show, and everybody's like, "Yeah, no pressure." But Judy
seriously, this
Thureson,
one is the best one.
Yeah, it is.
It's because
Judy
of you guys.
It's not because of us. It's because of our guests. Because Judy. She's genuine, man, and she's got a genuine desire to see people live their most authentic life. In the last decade, she's helped hundreds of clients focus on their mental, physical, and spiritual health. And so Judy specializes in high performance coaching, and she helps her clients unlock their superpower. She's passionate about helping her clients grow through adversity and build resilience and strength. And the reason she's so powerful is in June of 2019, Judy experienced the tragic loss of her 18-year-old son, Jacob, to opioid overdose. So her number one best-selling book, Beautiful Tragedy, chronicles her experience and introduces the GIVE principle. And we'll talk about that today. So she's a trusted resource for grieving families. She shares tools on how to use healthy coping skills to navigate the storms of grief and uncertainty. And we're lucky enough to have her on our show today. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm already emotional. If you know me, I cry all the time.
Uh-oh. Here we go. I'm going to cry too.
Where's my Kleenex?
I know I might have to jump out and grab some. This will be an impactful show, especially when it comes to grieving, mourning, tools around that. And we never know how these shows are going to go. We kind of have some direction, but we like to dive into your story. And so we always go back in time initially, and then we let it play out from there, kind of like life does. And so if you would, kind of share what life was like when you were growing up.
Wow. We don't have a lot of time to, no, I'm kidding. I'm number 7 out of 8 kids. So life was pretty chaotic and full and, loud and crazy. And
yeah,
it was easy to kind of just be left behind or not seen, just pretty much had to grow up quickly and be very independent.
Yeah.
So much so that it got me into a lot of trouble, by age 12, 13, 14. I mean, I was out in the streets and, trying and experimenting all kinds of things just to, I was bored and, and really to deal with hardship and trauma and grief and loss, that as a young child, you don't really know how to communicate that. You don't know how to process that. You don't have healthy coping skills. So I think that's why I'm passionate about helping people, starting with young kids. How do you build great skills and healthy habits so that you don't turn to those things, right? And I'm sure you guys can agree with me that we need it now more than ever.
No, totally disagree. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
especially now we have, so many things that occupy us. So back in the day, I would just go out in the neighborhood and get in a lot of trouble. And now we're pretty much giving children, the internet, the world at their fingertips, where they can get into all kinds of stuff, right?
They can.
So fast forward, I mean, there's a lot that's happened, but I want to start on June 13, 2019. I was on my kitchen table with my husband having breakfast, and I was getting ready to launch this meditation mindfulness video or series that I was so passionate about, and I wanted to share it with the world because I felt like that was the missing link for me. I've tried everything. I've been in personal development for 15 years, health and wellness. I've tried lots of tools, but this one in particular I felt like was the game changer, and I wanted to have it in every person's hands. So as my husband and I were talking that morning, June 13, I said to him, I feel a little apprehensive because whenever I try to launch something big, something bad happens to Jacob. And Jacob at that time was my 18-year-old son. And we had been battling with his mental health in the last couple of years, substance abuse, in and out of rehab, and very, very tumultuous, trying time. And so that, we were in a season of sobriety and peace, and he was doing great. And he was an artist. He was in LA. He got signed to a major record deal. But that particular morning, I don't know, maybe you call it mother's instinct, but I just felt this, I don't know, I'm just feeling nervous, And my husband looks at me and he says, you don't have to worry. Everything's fine. Jacob's not going to ruin this for you. This is our thing. We're going to make this happen. So fast forward about an hour later is when I get a phone call from Jacob's girlfriend that he was found unresponsive and being rushed to the emergency room in LA. We were in Arizona. And little did I know that the very tools I was getting ready to launch into the world were the tools I was going to need for me to get through this most tragic time of my life. And isn't that interesting? Sometimes we get the medicine, we get the cure before we get the ailment. And I feel like, God was very gracious in giving me so many tools. I mean, I've been in the grief recovery world for the last decade or so. And so I had all these tools that sadly I was going to have to use and put into practice in this moment. And so,
what's amazing is Viktor Frankl in his book, The Man's Search for Meaning, says the same thing. He didn't create his tools in the camps. He created them before, and then unfortunately, right, had an opportunity to test them through the camps. And man,
wow.
That's impactful. Keep going. And I'm sorry. That's intense.
Yeah. And, I love that you mentioned Viktor Frankl. It's one of my top, books I've ever read, and very powerful. And actually one of the influences to the GIVE principle, if you guys would like me to share that, is that okay to share that now?
Yeah.
Fire away.
So, so GIVE is an acronym, right? And it came from this place of, we want to give all the time. But if we're not replenishing, then we're giving from an empty cup, right? And so who's ever experienced burnout or just, whatever, you just, we're done, right? Before we can even get started because we're so just giving to everybody else. And so this was the moment where I had to learn how to pour into me first. And especially if you've ever struggled with someone, a loved one with addiction. I mean, it takes everything out of you. And if you're not replenishing yourself, you're going down with them. And so I had to learn how to use these tools. And the GIVE principle stands for grounding. Number one is grounding, presence, mindfulness. And I will tell you, that was so powerful. When we were in the hospital with Jacob, he was in a coma for 2 weeks. And in my normal default self, I would have been just riddled with anxiety and worry and freaking out. And I would not have been able to cherish and really be there with him for those 2 weeks. Every single day was a miracle. Every breath was a miracle. We literally had an oxygen thing that would count how many breaths he was taking per minute. It gives you a different perspective on how every breath is a miracle, right? So that grounding was so powerful, just being present, because none of us are promised tomorrow. And so it really taught us, like, wow, cherish every second you have with your loved ones. I stands for intention. Intention. I want to propose to all of us that we are already expert meditators. Did you know that? We're already expert meditators? Because you're already ruminating on something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
our default is it's probably something negative. If you're not trained and if you're not intentionally thinking about something positive, you're probably already thinking about something negative, even right now as you're listening, right? And so that intention was so powerful to shift our perspective, shift our thoughts. And every single day, I would just write down a word of what my intention was going to be, whether it's surrender, whether it's peace, whether it's hope. I mean, just these single, words that I would just grab onto and say, okay, this is all I can think about today. And whenever my mind would start to wander, I'd bring myself back. So that intention is very, very powerful.
Can I throw something in on intention?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the word intention comes from the Latin intendere, which is to stretch. So tendons, right? To stretch towards something. And so having something to stretch toward from those ruminations is incredibly powerful. And it could be anything. Like you said, some days it's bigger than others. Some days I could stretch further than others. And for the most part, physically, I'm inflexible. But in life, I'm learning to flex a little bit. Just the connection between what we stretch toward and our ability to flex further and further is incredible.
I love that. That's awesome. I also think of intention as our GPS system, right? We started this show today and you're like, hey, this is the best show ever. And you set that intention. That is what's going to happen, right, for today. And so that was the same principle, in my GIVE principle is like, okay, we got to set the intention for something positive, because in the middle of trauma, in the middle of tragedy, it's easy to go down quick, right? So it was just tethering ourselves to this, whatever this word was. Very powerful. And then V stands for visualization. Again, inspired by Viktor Frankl as well, because when I study a lot of Holocaust survivors, they share about the things that kept them going in those deep, darkest times was visualizing themselves going home to their family, visualizing themselves getting out of whatever situation they were in. And I think the human spirit is so powerful. We can be in the worst situation, but our mind processes in pictures and stories. And so when we're thinking about the best case scenario, it tells our nervous system that, oh, well, that's what's happening. Our body can't differentiate between reality and what's imagined. So why not imagine the best case scenario? And when you set that intention and when you visualize what that looks like, guess what? That's where your feet follow, right? And so some people might say, wow, well, Judy, that didn't work out for you very well because Jacob didn't make it. But in those moments, that hope and that visualization kept us alive, kept us from totally losing it because we had that hope that he was going to make it every single day. And sometimes what our visualization does come true, just not in the way that we think it's going to come true, right? I remember there were days where I would just visualize Jacob not suffering and not being in pain and waking up without having brain damage and all these things. And I remember going on a prayer walk, praying to God and being angry and just devastated, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And him saying, and you know, and this was during a time there was this song that was really popular called Raise a Hallelujah. And it was about this family who had this little boy who got really sick, and they prayed, they raised a hallelujah, they got everybody to pray for him, and then he lived. And I was really angry at that song. I was really angry at God. And I remember going on a prayer walk and just having it out with him. And why do you answer their prayers and not my prayers? You know, and very loudly, I just heard him say, "How do you know I didn't answer your prayer? He is safe. He is not suffering anymore. He does not have brain damage," right? It's just a different perspective
You know,
now.
as you were talking, I was thinking about like going through those difficult and hard, things where you put up a prayer like that, you raise your hallelujah, and it doesn't work out the way that you thought. I've thought a lot about this, and I sit in it every time something like this happens in my life. And I haven't lost, a child. There's some pretty heavy things that can happen to somebody. Hugh has lost a child. Um, but I've lost loved ones, and I've been through very challenging times where it was like felt like my Mount Everest, right? Like it was my hard thing at the moment, and it didn't work out exactly how I had hoped it would. It didn't go the way that I thought it would, and sometimes that ends in somebody passing away, things like that. But through through those hard things, I've always found that there was opportunities for my own personal growth.
Mm.
And so I love that perspective that you're having and the positivity that you're choosing to see through that, because very easily you could tell yourself a completely different story and tell others a completely different story, and complain and doesn't bring back your son, right? Doesn't change what happened. But I've found when I choose to look at it in a different light, a different perspective, then my mind can go and see all of the things where I can grow and stretch and and handle even more, and be grateful for the time. Hugh just said it just a minute ago. Going back up, he said, "Man, how great!" I think he said that you were able to spend right there. Boom. Grateful you had 18 years with Jacob. That was towards the beginning of the
Wow.
show. That was his
Yeah.
perspective, instantly, because he was started to train his mind to think that way, right?
Right.
Versus,
Right.
you could think of all of the worst things that have happened because of that, or that you lost your son, and why, and be mad at God, and do so many other different things um, that could take you down a completely different path.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I want to honor you for doing that. I mean, I've been in moments where I said I was pretty ticked off at God and the universe for the direction that the things that had come into my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to share, that it's okay to be mad at God or the universe or whoever, right? When things don't work out. And I think there's a difference between positivity and toxic positivity.
Mm,
The
Mm.
toxic positivity is something that we just want to gloss over. Everything's going to be okay. God is in control. God doesn't give you anything. There's these pat answers, these Hallmark Christian sayings, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we say that if we're, as a grief recovery specialist, we tell our clients those are not helpful. They may be true and they may feel good at the moment, but they're not very helpful because it's not real.
Yeah, we did an entire show on toxic positivity
Oh,
and
awesome.
how impactful it can be in the other direction, because it can cause you to lose hope. And things like vision, when you talk about vision, our 12 journeys are a lot of alignment with what you're sharing here, because you talk about grounding and coming into the present fully, which is what depression is designed to do, what grief is designed to do, is to get you to be present. And when you talk about meditation and mindfulness, that rumination, we're already doing it. So it's a matter of redirecting it and transforming that energy from one form to another. And in ours, we talk about intention or uncertainty. You talk about intention, but we always say that vision carries you through the uncertainty. Vision carries you through the unknown, and that intention is what leans you toward the vision. And I think it's so important. Like, vision is so important. It's almost a delusion from what is. And it's funny that happiness often stems from delusion, and reality feels like depression, but happiness feels like delusion. It's one of those things that carries us forward into a hope. It's not a delusion in a negative sense.
Right.
It's just, it gives us something beyond what currently is. And I can see how that would pull us forward. I mean, what comes up as you hear that?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. Like I said earlier, our GPS system,
Yeah.
you have to be intentional to where you want to go. And visualization is such a powerful part of that, because if you can see it, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit later about the event that's happening in January 23rd, but I visualized that whole event before I even opened my mouth to ask, Steve. I already saw the whole thing play out. And so every night before I go to bed, I have this vision of what that looks like. I've already rehearsed every step, every song that's going to be on, every person that's going to be on stage, so it is a very powerful just way of being. I love it. It's part of who I am and how I show up. And here's a very interesting connection that I just learned this week for me. Okay, this is not scientifically proven, or I'm not a doctor, but I had this connection that why visualization and manifestation is so natural for me is because growing up as a child of that struggled with a lot of trauma, I had to live in this imaginary world to survive. I had to visualize a place where I didn't have trauma in my life. I had to visualize a place where I didn't have hardship in my life.
Yeah.
And so I got really good at living in an imaginary world. And so here I am now as an adult. I still live in this imaginary world, but now I've just learned how to, like you said, your intention pulling you to that vision. I've learned how to walk into that vision. And so if you guys know my story, I mean, miracles happen all the time for me. And I used to think, gosh, it's just luck. I don't understand how this happens for me. But I really believe it's connected to, I've spent my whole life living in this imaginary world, and I've just learned how to connect it and how to step into it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Steve, I always share Steve Jobs' quote, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do that backward. And so you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect. And so he says, whether it's karma, God, or whatever, it doesn't matter as long as you have that faith or trust that it's going to connect somehow. And so when you have the vision, and I love the imagination, imagine is one of the most powerful words. And this was part of my coaching conversation this morning. It's one of the most powerful words in the English language, because when you can get somebody to imagine, it really pulls them into a space of creation. We often share that when nothing is certain, everything is possible. And that's the space you're talking about, is being able to create in such a way that there are no limitations. that you get to put in that room, whatever you want to put in that room, that you get to imagine your life in any way that you want. And there is no limitation, just like we were as kids. And I want to lean on you a little bit around this, is how did you envision yourself through grief, at the other side of grief and grieving and the loss of a son? And you might still be in this and in the intention of it, but what is your vision around that, and how does that carry you forward? Can you speak to that?
100%. Such a great question. Kind of piggybacking on what we were talking about earlier is that when I live in the why did this happen? It's easy to take me down a spiral. When I live in the what, that's what takes me out. Okay, I cannot change what happened, but I can change what's going to happen going forward. And I became very, very passionate about being an advocate for people who were suffering in silence. When I went through my journey with Jacob, I was daily online, sharing every step of the way, the real stuff. And I had leaders messaging me. I'm talking pastors, community leaders, people, police officers, people you would never believe were struggling with their own, children, with their mental health. And they were inboxing me, just thanking me for being open, because it made them not feel alone. And so that was the vision that carried me, is that, nothing's going to hurt me more than losing my son. So I'm willing to be in the front lines and take whatever the hits are, because there's so much stigma attached to addiction and mental health. And even in the middle of my grief, I, experienced that. But at that point, I didn't care, because if I have to be in the front line to push that border, that envelope forward, I'm willing to do it. And plus my personality too. I think, the best way to get me to do something is to tell me that I can't do it. A little bit stubborn, in that way. And so I joined forces with PAL, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones, and I support their cause. And I wrote a book, and, I help people with their grief. And so I had to put purpose to my pain. And I love what my husband calls it. He says, we have to steward our suffering well. And so that's the vision, and that's the heart behind everything that I do now, and I love what Hugh said, that we had Jacob for 18 years. And I'll say, Jacob was my very best teacher. I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing now had it not been for this experience that we've had.
That word suffering, right? The word passion means to suffer willingly, right? So anything that you're passionate about, you're willing to suffer through. And I had the vision while you're talking, it was a little off, but Bob Ross or Tony Little, the guy on the Gazelle, suffering and he's just like energetically like, yes, and full of energy. Like you could suffer that way, or you can suffer like Bob Ross, like happy little accidents, and there's a way to experience stretching in a way that is pleasurable. If we speak of it that way, it's not painful, because we enjoy the stretch, if that makes sense. So having purpose, in Viktor Frankl's book, he talked about it being whatever anybody chose. It could be as simple as giving bread to another, and that becomes your purpose. And the word purpose comes from the Latin pose, which means to move forward, to pause. And so when you move forward to a place to pause, if I'm traveling on a road trip, I've got a lot of places pegged out along the way where I want to pause. And this whole thing is a journey. And so having a place to pause, when I get here, I'll take a break, and then I'm going to be looking for the next mountain to climb. So purpose, there's not just one, and it really can be made up. Like there's no limitation to it. What comes up for either of you as you hear that? Maybe I can direct it. Yeah. Yeah.
So what,
as you think of purpose and stretching and all of these things, like what's the first thing that comes to mind around that for you when you think of purpose and struggling, suffering, passion? You know, like that's where the conversation kind of diverged a little bit, not diverged, but bifurcated. Yeah.
Well, for me, I think it's fluid and it's open-ended, right? I've done a lot of things in my coaching practice. It's funny, I just had a conversation recently with my coach, and I said, I don't want to be pegged as the grief girl. Like, I'm fun. I want to have fun. I want life to be happy, and I don't want to talk about grief all the time. And he said, you just have to respect that this season in your life, that you are the grief girl. You're the go-to person that families are going to go to because of your experience, and it's fresh and it's current and it's relevant and it's right now. And so I have to be open to, I'll just, be okay with where I'm at, be present with where I'm at, with the purpose that I have right now. Does it mean that's going to be my purpose forever? I don't know. But I have to be okay with not judging my purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There is no wrong purpose.
There is no wrong purpose. Yeah.
Because it's all made up anyway. It's all made up anyway. And so why not, if you're creating, and Steve Hardison's a master at this, and I see his comments here. I don't know.
I can't see them.
I don't know, Ryan.
Steve just said, he said, a message from Jacob to his angel mother, Judy. You are the best thing to ever happen to me in my life. Thank you for being my mom. I love you, Mom.
Wow. Thanks, Steve.
Steve Hardison sitting in church, being inspired on both ends.
Yeah.
Breaking both legs.
Breaking both legs.
Gosh.
The purpose, we are constantly creating, unconsciously or consciously, we're constantly creating our worlds. And purpose is simply creating it in the direction we want to go, and the intention and the stretching toward the vision that we have. And so that's a conscious thing. And there might be a point where it becomes habitual and it's automated, and we no longer have to be conscious about it because we just create that thing naturally and automatically, which is kind of the intention of and the design of our body is to do that anyway. But so many of us are used to unconsciously creating our worlds in a negative direction or an unuseful direction that we don't feel like it can change. And what you're giving inside of this is when you talk about grounding and being present, and then setting an intention, which is pulled through by that visualization of what's on the other side of it. That vision becomes your purpose. That intention, as you wake up, every step you take into that intention becomes your purpose. So it's not limited. It can never be limited to one purpose. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that when we keep searching for the purpose, right? We miss what's in front of us.
Yeah.
So that's where that whole being present is, again, so powerful and needed. So yeah. And lastly, for the give principle, before I forget, is E stands for expressing gratitude, right? So we already know, science has already, shown us in so many studies that supports that gratitude rewires your brain. Well, there's a different energy that happens when you express gratitude. Okay, so when you express gratitude, again, you're casting out, you're putting out into the world, you're creating with your words gratitude that other people are able to receive and receive that energy back.
Is there a word for that, Ryan? Like expressing, and so it becomes based on what you speak?
Abracadabra is what I say a lot.
I hooked that one right.
Yeah.
Yank that right in.
The magic of it all. It's what is the Hebrew translation, Nick?
As you speak it, so it is. And Avara Kedavra, the other version, is as you speak it, so it is destroyed. And here's the beauty in destruction too. is that it creates the chaos and the material for somebody else's creation. And so sometimes in life, we have these things that are destroyed, the loss of a loved one, the missing limb, the inability to walk. For me, simply, a divorce or loss of smell through COVID, right? Like these things have me show up in a new way that couldn't have come without the chaos. Richard Paul Evans says that chaos is the mine of creation. And so things like this where we want just the positive growth, but sometimes that destruction of things in our life, that chaos that's created, becomes a foundation for new growth that we couldn't have experienced otherwise.
Yeah. So true. So true. It's necessary, right? Those are the chapters in our book that we want to rip out, but you don't get to chapter 19 unless you go through chapter 13,
Right.
And it's sometimes you just have to really live through those moments and trust that you have everything inside of you to get through it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the whole point of what my book is, the strength and resilience is in the other side of the hardship.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, we're not willing to go through that because, hey, if there's a shortcut, I want that way. If there's an easier way, if there's a painless way, but those things are necessary and needed. And sadly, we're not showing that part of humanity as much, right? I mean, here we are in a global traumatic experience of COVID and all the losses that we're experiencing. And shows like this and conversations like this, we're helping equip people to show them that you can make it through and it's going to be okay. And we're going to do this together in community, right?
We are, the whole shutdown of the world in a way, right? A stepping back of the world in depression. What a blessing and opportunity if people will step back and see the gift in it, because depression isn't your enemy. Depression is meant to get you to step back and step into the grounding and reality as it is. It really is. It's meant to have you look at things that are no longer deserving of your energy and to pull back and to ruminate and reflect, like you say, to reflect on what is and to have reverence for what has occurred and what is currently occurring. And there's more empathy and compassion inside of depression than there is at any other time in our lives. And so when we have depression and we're down and we're seeing life as it is, and we're it's a gift. We're in a gift. We're in a gift right now. And on the other side of it, globally, collectively, on the other side of this, we can create some visions that are pretty phenomenal in a territory that's never been explored before, on a global scale. How many opportunities do people get for that? And so you can look at it and fight it and resist it, which a lot of people do, or you can take it as a blessing, right? Like there's opportunity in this for all of us to create it in a new way, just like the loss of Jacob. And, it's one of those things that really has you create a reverence for life and then to move forward in acceptance and gratitude for what remains and what's possible, which pulls you right into the vision, right? So if we're going to create it collectively, we've got to have conversations like this. There's nothing wrong with looking at it the way that it currently is. It's an objective realization that what we're doing isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
Huh.
So good. So powerful. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your heart. And I teach a lot on wholehearted living, meaning, we can't pick and choose and just say, no, I just want the joy. I just want the happiness. I just want all the good times. But when we wholeheartedly feel, the depression or the sadness or the grief or the loss, when you feel that at 100%, then you can also feel joy at 100%. So when we stay in that place of disconnect or numbing or fear of really feeling it because it's so painful, we're losing out on the 100% magnitude of what joy could feel like, right?
Yeah.
I had this conversation yesterday with someone, and she said, I don't want to love anymore because I've been hurt so much that I just want to keep my guard up because I cannot handle another loss. Well, here's a news flash. You're going to handle another loss. If you live in this earth, that's going to happen, right? But so many times we guard up because we don't want to feel that pain. We're not going to feel the joy either. And so feel it all, embrace it all, walk into it, lean into it. When I was in the hospital with Jacob, I remember there were days where the doctors would come in and say, we're going to have to pull the plug. Like he's not getting better. He's getting worse. And those moments I would just want to go, okay, give me a tub of ice cream and let me just check out and not even feel what's happening. And I even write about it. There's a chapter in my book that's called Lean into Pain. Lean into pain. Like, be here. Don't go. It's a gift. Like you said, it was a gift for me to be in that room and feel everything.
Man, it's that numbing. I can relate to it because I've done it. The numbing, the not wanting to feel, right? And we do it all in different ways. We can do it by busyness. We can do it with career. We can do it with alcohol or drugs. We do it
ice cream.
Yeah, ice cream like that. And we would rather not feel what's currently present. But it's inside of that our greatest lessons come out. It's like, if we can just sit with the difficult emotions and let them play out. We talk about salmonic action, which is the idea that salmon in the roughest of waters will sit perfectly still. They create a vortex around themselves so that no matter how fast the current is moving, they can sit still. They won't even move a fin. And in life, when the chaos of life is flowing around us, if we'll just hold still and let things play out salmonically, we'll look for opportunities to move forward. And that's what we've got going on here in this world. Is there is so much opportunity, or in loss, there's so much opportunity if we'll just sit still and let it play out, that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Steve Chandler, he once said, even a dead fish can float downstream. So yeah, it's easy to get mixed up in the chaos and float downstream. But if you hold still, there are opportunities right now in this world for everybody on this video and more, to create something better for your lives. And your acronym GIVE is a foundation for that. Get grounded, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So good. So yeah, it's pouring back into ourselves because we cannot give what we don't have. So when you give to yourself, then you're able to pour out of your fullness versus your empty cup, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's easy to get busy and do all the actions without the heart behind it. And so I just want to encourage, all of us to really live in such a way that we are pouring out, that it's natural, it's organic, it's authentic. It's not something you have to do. It's just who you are. It's who you're being, like we've all been talking about lately after reading Steve's book. So powerful, so good. It's how do you show up? How do you show up?
Yeah. Let's dive into your creation, January 23rd. Let's talk about that and how these things. This is what's amazing about it, is these things. You coach around these things. And now you've got a creation that you're creating from the ether, that idea. Can you walk us through what you're creating, how it came about, the vision for it, what you've experienced? I'd really love you to just dump it all out. The raw, the real. Yeah.
Yeah. Before that, my earpods are losing juice. I'm going to put this on real quick
for
here.
Sure. For sure.
What's interesting too, Nick, why she's doing that is that even this show, even this right now, even what we started with the Giants, and that you did all of those years ago was part of this co-creation of what Judy's doing, Steve Hardison's book, all of those people that are involved in that ultimate experience have
You know
all
what?
intertwined and intersected, and it was like created a long time before, or started to, even before it was even dreamed up.
I have this imagination. Einstein talks about the theory of relativity, of time being relative. And for humans, we're bound by time. We're bound by space in a 3D world, and then the fourth dimension being time, right? So we have this linear view of the world. But in physics, they're showing consistently that time is not relative when it comes to physics, that it can go in any direction. We had an experience getting an assistant that would have had to go back in time for it to be created as quickly as it did. It happened within 11 minutes of the declaration. It was created and it was fulfilled within 11 minutes of that, speaking it to the world. So I wonder which version of me is speaking me into creation in the future, because if physics and the laws of the universe are true and that time is relative, the moment I speak it, it goes in every direction to create as a reality whatever I speak, abracadabra. And that might be woo and crazy, but Judy, I think you're going to confirm that in what you're describing and what you're going to share, is that it will cross the universe to bring into reality everything you need to fulfill that vision.
Yes. And the number one lesson is to, when you get the prompting and when you have the vision, is that you ask and you open your mouth.
Yeah.
How many times have we had visions where we didn't do that? And then I know for me, I've had these ideas for books or, coaching courses or something that I just thought, wow, this is such a great idea. And I didn't do anything with it. And then a few months later, this person over here is doing exactly what I thought up. And that's the thing with vision and creation and promptings, and I call the spirit, is he is only looking for an open, willing vessel. He's not looking for a perfect person. He's looking for someone who's crazy enough to say yes and stupid enough to think they can do it. And sadly, there are many things that I said, oh, I can never do that. And then there are other things where I'm like, all right, I'm going. Actually, 2014, I made a commitment to what I call the Holy Spirit. And I said, anything that you say, I'm going to say yes to. That's a very crazy and scary commitment, because if you know the Spirit, he's going to ask you to do crazy things to stretch you and to use you. And so that's what happened. November 6th, I had this crazy idea of creating an event. And the reason was because I had this opportunity to be coached by Phil Weech. If you guys are familiar with Phil.
Yeah. Hi, Philip.
He is.
He'll be watching this later. I tagged him already.
Yay. Yeah, he's one of Steve's clients. And even how that happened, let me rewind a little bit, is if you guys know that I was one of the 6 people out of the 6-pack that got to have this experience with Steve Hardison from Arizona to LA. That's actually how I first met you, Nick, is we called you when we were in the phone. Do you remember that? We called you a few times.
Yeah.
And so we had this amazing experience, this one-day experience with Steve that was so life-changing and so impactful and so powerful. And so we get back and, life is happening. One of the other ladies posts her experience with Steve. So very flippantly, not intentionally, just in passing, I write on her Facebook, that was so fun. We should do a debrief sometime and have a Zoom conversation, all 6 of us, to talk about our experience, right? And it was very in passing, didn't even think about it. I just wrote it. So then next thing you know, Steve Hardison sees my message and then says, Judy Thureson, why don't you make that happen? And then tagged everybody Right? Because what you seek, you should follow and be able to commit to.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what did I just do? And
No
Yeah.
so
pressure.
here I am. No pressure. I actually was out of town hosting a retreat, and I see Julie on here. She just posted, but Julie was around, and Julie's amazing. And I said, Julie, can you help me put together the Zoom meeting? And she did, and we recorded it because Steve couldn't be there, so we recorded it, and it was powerful. It was all 6 of us, or a few other people, just sharing about our experience with the trip, and we sent it off to Steve. That was on a Sunday evening. Monday, Phil and Steve are watching our recording, and long story short, they said, why don't we create an experience where where Phil can coach the 6-pack? And they came back to us with this proposal.
Yeah.
And right away, I already said, oh, I can't do that. Like, that's a big investment. I don't have it. And I was ready to just shut the door to that opportunity because of my circumstances, because of the facts, because of
Yeah.
what was in
Yeah.
my bank account, right?
Right.
And how many times do we do that where we
Yeah.
shut it off before we can even be open to the possibilities?
We shut the door on the mirror.
So, yeah. And so that was a big lesson for me. I had a 20-minute Zoom conversation with Phil just to see if it was going to be a good fit for him and I to be in this coaching situation. And 20 minutes after that conversation, I walked away with like, oh my gosh, is that all it costs? Sky's the limit. We can make this happen. And I committed right then and there. I have no idea how this is going to happen, but it's going to happen. Commitment's so powerful, right? Commitment is so powerful.
Yeah.
That afternoon. Oh, go ahead.
Well, just a quick share, and then continue right there. But I had an event that I was going to go to. It was $10,000 for a 2-day event. I didn't have that money. I put my motorcycle up for sale. I committed in every way. I went out and created contracts if I could. Things weren't coming together. Ryan remembers this.
Mm-hmm.
About a day before the event started, I had a client commit to coaching for a $10,000 agreement, and I used that to create that event. It was amazing, but it was after everything I could think of. I was like chasing every avenue, but it took that commitment for it to even be seated. But keep going. That was off track, but
no, yeah. I mean, it just confirms that commitment is so powerful. When you make the commitment, everything, the universe comes towards you to fulfill that commitment. It's that GPS system again, right? If you put that in the GPS system, this is what I want, that's where you're going to go. When I first put the GPS system is, I can't go there. I don't have it. That's where you're going to go. But when you say, and you're open to the possibilities, things open up. And so I created, an event for myself to host a retreat. And, and I up-leveled the price for this retreat. So that was very scary because I'd never charged that much for my retreats before. And guys, it sold out in less than a week. Right?
Weird.
And I would have never stretched myself to put myself out there like that had it not been for this goal, this vision of wanting to coach with Phil. And then there was a few other of us that had this opportunity to be in the small group coaching with Phil. And that's where I had this creation of, hey, why don't we have this huge event? We can charge money for it, raise the money to coach with Phil and create the money. And that's where Steve Hardison comes in, because I said, well, for this to happen, we need to have somebody there super, super, super special. And the spirit put in my heart, call Steve. And if you guys know that Steve doesn't do things like that, that was a pretty bold and crazy ask. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I don't know how many people would have done that, because everyone knows in his circle that that's just not who Steve is. He doesn't do things like that. So for me to ask him was pretty miraculous. But again, I needed a little nudge from the universe, because the day that I committed to asking Steve, on a Monday from 11 to 1, I put it on my calendar. I told people, I said, this is what I'm doing. And when that time came, I chickened out. I got scared. Again, how many of us commit to doing something, and then once we get to the door, we're like, I'm not going.
Yeah. Yep. Keep going.
So
Yeah.
how that happened. So I went to bed that night disappointed in myself that I didn't have the integrity and the commitment to follow through with what I said I was going to do. And at that point, I was ready to kind of give it up and say, oh, you talk yourself out of it, right? The doubts come in and say, oh, well, that's really a crazy idea. Who are you? He's not going to say yes to you. He doesn't do these things. So all those thoughts started to come, and I went to bed. I had a dream about Steve Hardison, that I was at his house. There's this big party. There's everybody there. We're eating. We're, dancing. And I go to leave, and I can't find my car keys. I can't find my car. So I'm stuck there. So I have this dream, and I wake up a little frazzled, like, oh, okay. And I open my phone, and the very first message on my phone was from Steve Hardison. And there was no context to this message. It was a video from one of his clients, Townsend Wardlaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Townsend opens up this video with this. He says, I'm having coffee with my wife this morning, and she asked me a question. Have you ever struggled with fear and uncertainty? Have you ever wanted to do something big in your life and then got afraid to do it? I'm like, seriously? How is this the video that I'm watching right now from Steve Hardison when I'm having this fear of talking to him? So that was just a sign of, okay, you have to do this now. You are on the hook to do this now. And this was first thing in the morning. So before my mind was even awake, I responded to Steve right away. And I said, how did you know I needed this video? And he says, I didn't. It was divine. And I said, well, so can I ask you a question? I have a crazy idea for you. And he says, call me right now. I'm free. And so, oh my God, my heart starts to race. But again, before I can think about what was happening, I'm already calling. I'm on the phone. And I share with him my crazy idea. And he said yes. So imagine if I would not have asked, if I would have stayed in my fear, we wouldn't be all meeting together January 23rd. Guys, it's so humbling. I read some of these messages, people calling me saying, oh, my whole family's coming. My whole team is coming. We rearranged our vacation plans to be there. We're coming from Canada. We're coming. It is very overwhelming to be this vessel of the person that just was open enough to ask.
Yeah.
So it's
what
very
I hear in
powerful.
this, Judy Thureson is not the grief coach. However, she is the creation coach from spaces like grief. It's you have a way of creating the vision and expressing the gratitude and creating the intention out of difficult and challenging things. You have an ability to create vision inside of uncertainty in such a way that it creates a movement like you did on January 23rd. I mean, it's a movement. I mean, there's a whole group around it now, and there's people from all over the world that are committing to be there. And so your power is coming in this ability to show people, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter where you think you are, your vision has the ability to pull you out of that. And it's almost like
this is proof of it right here. If you go to the ultimate Facebook group and watch the videos and done by Steve Bacon, Coach Steve Bacon. There's your shout out, Steve. Him and his wife and their experience, Judy, all of these experiences, how intertwined they are. It's so crazy with Townsend, Louisa, like it's insane.
It's inspiring, those that are watching, it's inspiring for me. Like, hold the vision. If you're holding back, a lot of times you're not trusting the vision. It's like, I want to hold on to the rope that I got. And I've got things right now in my mind that I can see that I've done that on right now. And so letting go into the vision and trusting it'll play out the way it needs to play out. In some cases, it plays out even better than you think it would. and not going into toxic positivity here. It truly is that there's something higher for you, and it's going to take some letting go, some trusting, some stepping into the darkness, some Indiana Jones style walking onto the bridge, right? Like, you got to take that first step, and your commitment, that asking for that commitment and that declaration of it, just transcended time, right?
Yeah.
All of this has been coming together for you for years, but it took your declaration for that to get into action.
Yeah.
Huh.
And how Jacob plays out in all this is his passing taught me that life isn't guaranteed. And so what do you got to lose, right? What is it? Are you going to regret more that you didn't ask, or you're going to regret more that, you know, all the things that we put our focus in, right?
Yeah.
All the mundane, meaningless things that, you know, we think we just got to work, we got to make money, we got to, you know, do all these things to live. But like, are we really living? And that's what Jacob's death has taught me is, man, you got to live full out. He was only 18, but this kid lived, you know, if he, and I share this with Steve as well, is that I envision if Jacob would have made it to his 60s, he would be like Steve Hardison. He had no rules. He loved life. He didn't fit in a box. You know, Jacob really created new genres of music that he intertwined, that most people say, well, you can't do that. And he's like, why not? You know, that was his spirit, that was his attitude. And I feel like I get to walk in and carry on his legacy of being that person that's not going to be afraid, that's going to live authentically, that's going to live wholeheartedly, that's going to ask, that's going to do crazy things and love life and enjoy life fully. So I am very, very grateful.
Ryan, what do you got?
Oh, it's a possibility of, you know, like I was sitting here thinking about your son's death, but that's not where it ended. Because you're right, his legacy is continuing, and this massive creation was in large part because of him.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be if it wasn't for that experience, and then you being inspired through him to then take action steps. I talked to a billionaire, and he talked about how, and this was a while back, but he would take note cards, and his stuff would come to him in intuition, or inspiration. He would write it down on the note card, and he said that most people would just write their goals or write down on a note card and do nothing about it and have a pocket full of note cards. He would have a pocket full of note cards, look at it, and then get up every day and look at how he could put it into action, how he could be with that inspiration. And that's what you did. You had that inspiration. You had this drive, this vision. You wrote it down on a note card, and then you looked at the note card every day and started piecing it together and stepping, and look at the beautiful creation that has come. And I'd even submit to you that like I talked about at the beginning of the show, is that Nick wrote this book, what, 12 years ago, Nick?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That talk about transcending time and bringing a group of people together that we wouldn't, like. Steve Hardison is the giant in this book. That was the inspiration of the giant in the Giants and the Smalls. And all of this getting like, I just had this image of a swirl ice cream cone just getting swirled all together, all of these different lives getting poured into a cup, and it just swirling around and intertwining together to make this beautiful creation. And so I'm just sitting here, mind blown, in awe, a lot of gratitude as I'm thinking about all of the things that have happened in all of our lives, and all the people that are watching, and that will watch, and that will connect at that ultimate experience, just because of that's going to be a culmination of meeting and seeing all of their being to be at that meeting. And I'm pretty dang excited to give a lot of people hugs and to hear their
Yes.
stories and to co-create from that point and see where all of that leads to and how many lives we can impact and how we can help inspire others to do the same thing, that they can understand and know that they are giants already and that they can be, do, or have anything that they want to have. So I thank you so much for sharing all of this with me today, because it's just bringing it all into the now. So thank you.
It's perfect.
So good. I
Anything
forgot
else?
to share one
Yep.
more
Yep.
important thing
Beautiful.
is that this event that we created initially to create the funds for our coaching. So myself, Alex Dumas, Xavier Marin, Julie Westover, we have this opportunity to be in a group coaching with Phil, and we created this together to raise the funds. Well, when Phil and Steve found out that that's the reason we created this, they want to give every single penny to charity. And that is amazing. I have to say that shifted the energy in the way that we're creating this. It's, I don't want to say effortless, because it's, it's a big deal creating an event like this, but the flow of it is, it's so powerful and so joyful, knowing that the money that we raise is going to support so many great causes. And maybe I can send you guys links later. You can share that on here so people know where their money is going. It's an investment. So if you come to this event, you're not coming to support us or, Steve or anybody else. You're supporting these organizations that we're giving to, and it's going to be so powerful and beautiful that we get to do that.
I'll tell you, we were the kind of the beneficiaries of some of that with Alyssa Hand's miracle that came in through totally outside of what was going on with that, with Vanessa Browers and Laban Ditchburn and Joe, and there was some people in this miracle group that even expanded and got bigger and bigger and bigger for a Christmas miracle that we created, all because Judy. I mean, like, it's insane, but it's totally believable at the same time that all of this got tied together, and that because of you stepping up and being that, that was able to also contribute to something outside of that, but then bring a whole bunch of other people that had no idea who Steve Hardison was. They have no idea who we are, that all of a sudden came all together, and now they're coming to the event as well.
So cool.
It's pretty
The
amazing.
odds of this happening are slim to none, but surprisingly high. Like, that's how we look at it.
Yeah.
It's like there's no other way to explain. It's a miracle how it all comes about. And so, Judy, thank you so much. I mean, you've been a blessing on this show. I do feel like our declaration at the beginning of the best show that we've ever done is fulfilled. And we never stop saying that. That's a beautiful thing, is every time we create one of these shows, it is the best show that we've ever had. And it continually does that, expands and gets even progressively better. And man, we love you. Thank you. Thanks for being on.
I love you both so much. I know we've never met and we've only known each other for a little while, but I feel your hearts. I feel your purpose. I'm a huge supporter, and I cannot wait to give you both big hugs in January. And, we're in this together.
I'll take
and
two,
I think
please.
when we align our purpose and our commitment, we all do converge together. And, that's where healing happens, is in communities, shared experience, shared hearts. And I just am so grateful and so honored to be on the show with you guys today.
Well, we're committed to, you had asked inside that group that, there were some tickets that were still available, and I committed right then to do anything in my power to fill those seats. And so this also helps. I share this in the ultimate group already. So that's being streamed live right now. and then
Wow.
in the Alyssa Ann's Miracle group, and then also in the Tribe of Giants and anything in our network. We'll continue to share that because we believe in what's coming together and the caliber of people that are still out there that have no idea about this, that will at some point. So,
Yeah, perfect. And for those that are watching, go get Judy's book, Beautiful Tragedy. Make sure you grab a copy of that. Remember, as always, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You know, that's why we wear these X's. It's all stemmed from this stone here. The idea is that you're exactly where you choose to be, and you're right on time. You know, it's just, you got to trust it. You know, you don't even have to do that. Sometimes it just works out because you're being who you're being. So just trust that it'll play out exactly as it should, and you're doing exactly what you should be doing. So just let it play out. Don't back out before it's time. You know, so many times we talk ourselves out or think ourselves out of it before we even give it a shot. So lean in, trust it, be Salmonic. We love you. Thanks for being a part of this, and we will see you in the next episode.
love you too.
Man, thank you guys. We'll see you.